You have a dangerous history. You served in Iraq. You were in the NYPD for 22 years, counterterrorism, Homeland Security, and you're an explosive engineer.
I discovered two things. I've discovered beer and pussy in that order. And my grade point average went from a 3.8 to a 1.9. So I ended up having to go in the Army. I didn't start hardcore drinking until probably after I got back from Desert Storm. My parents were just like, oh, we see you're fucking up. Well, okay, you'll learn. And I never fucking did.
What made you want to be a cop?
She's like, it was a year ago tonight, I got beat up and raped on the subway. And I was like, what? The next day, I went down to the local precinct and I was just like, hey, what do you got to do to be a cop here? Because I was like, how do I fix this? What do I do? Like, let me become part of the solution. Let me become the people that hunt the evil.
Welcome to Wham Bam Thank You, Pam. I'm your host, Pam Gaslow, writer, former stand-up comedian, and mastermind behind the 50-year plan to success. I also learned the hard way that you don't bring your vibrator to rehab and wrote a book about it. Here we have bold, unfiltered conversations about sex, relationships, personal lives, and pop culture with a sharp, sexy, and comedic edge. Wham Bam Thank You, Pam is the wildly entertaining, no-holds-barred discussion you didn't know you needed. Welcome to Wham Bam Thank You, Pam. I'm Pam Gaslow. Today's guest is a man who defused bombs, served in Iraq, worked undercover for the NYPD, and still made the questionable life choice of dating me 15 years ago. My guest is Mark DeSimone. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Pammy.
Thank you so much for being here.
That's a beautiful intro.
Of course, you're welcome. So you have a dangerous history, and I don't mean with me, and also a crazy resume. Your resume is long and impressive. You served in Iraq. You were in the NYPD for 22 years. 5 of those years were in counterterrorism. You did a stint in Undercover. You're a police academy instructor, Homeland Security, and you're an explosive engineer. You also once removed gum from my dog's paw.
That's true.
Is that on your resume?
It is not, because I didn't know if I was able to use you as a reference. So I didn't have permission.
I really appreciated that little thing of all your knowledge and all your experience in life. That warmed my heart. I remember when we dated, I loved hearing your work stories, and they were so insane and hysterical and entertaining. But let's talk first about your military service. You served in Iraq. How old were you when you did that? For how many years? And what role did you serve there?
I was 17 when I joined the Army. I'm not originally from New York. I was from the South. I grew up on a farm in Virginia and then in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. So most of my family went into the military. I had 2 grandfathers that went to West Point. And funny story about that. So when you have a grandfather, an uncle, a father, a mom, an aunt, or something that went to West Point, you get brownie points, I guess. They call it legacy. Because to get into West Point, you have to get all of these letters and you have to have like a 4.0 GPA and all this other stuff. But when you have family members that attended West Point, you kind of get to jump the line a little bit. You just have to follow a couple of rules. And one of those rules is the grade point average. And you have to do extracurriculars. So in high school, I joined the chess club just because I liked playing chess and I thought that's what we were going to do. And then I played football and soccer. And so I kept my extracurriculars up. But then my junior year of high school, I discovered 2 things, 2 wonderful things. How much profanity am I allowed, Pammy?
As much as you want.
I've discovered beer and pussy in that order. And I enjoyed them so much more than school. And my grade point average went from a 3.8 to a 1.9, which is like the minimum. I think a 1.8 is what you need to graduate. And so I went to a 1.9 and West Point was like, no, dude, no. So I ended up having to go in the Army. That was my only other choice, or community college. And I didn't want to stay in my town that I lived in. I lived in this little part of Virginia called Fairfax County, and it's nice and everything. I just didn't want to stay there. I wanted to go away. So that's what ended up putting me in the Army at 17.
Okay, that's funny for a few reasons. First of all, I didn't know that you play chess and I want to learn. And a funny story about me trying to learn chess. When I relapsed years ago, I was smoking weed all day long and all night. And I was like, when I get older, I need to learn something. I'm not going to be the girl who plays golf and plays cards. So I'm going to learn chess. So I went online and I found a chess tutor. And he was this Indian guy and he was so nice and he was good looking too. And he came over. I was so stoned and he's trying to teach me how to play chess. And I am like, what is this guy talking about? Like I didn't remember the name of the pieces. It was so pathetic and I never called him back. But anyway,
Well,
so
I'm the
so you
worst chess player you've ever met in your life.
oh,
So,
you are?
oh God, yeah.
Okay, so you're not gonna be my tutor. Okay.
No.
So you discovered beer and girls, and then you had like a downward spiral. So,
Yeah.
and when did you get sober? Was that before the army?
Oh no.
When did you hit bottom with all this?
I didn't hit bottom until my late 20s. I got sober at 27,
I got
but
sober at 26.
I didn't start hardcore drinking until probably after I got back from Desert Storm, when I got back from Iraq and Desert Storm and Saudi Arabia. Because actually, so I go off into the Army and I get sent up to Fort Dix, New Jersey for my training, and then down to a place called Fort Eustis, Virginia for my IT training, which is your advanced individual school training, which basically means your job. And then they were like, you have a choice. We can send you to California or we can send you to Germany. And I was just like, oh, fuck Germany. Yeah. Fuck yeah, bro. So they're like, all right, off to Germany you go. And they sent me off to Germany. And that's how we ended up going. If I had gone to Fort Ord, California, I never would have gone to Desert Storm. Probably would have stayed in the Army for 20 years or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
But so I go off there. That's how I ended up in Iraq and Saudi Arabia and a bunch of other places. There was a thing that happened in Crete, which is off the coast of Greece. There was a civil war there, and there's a U.S. embassy there that needed to be evacuated, and they needed people. They needed U.S. military that was the closest there to them, and we just happened to be closest, so they sent us to help do the evacuation and stuff. But I ended up being a helicopter guy. I was a helicopter mechanic, and that's what I asked to go to for school because I figured, my dad was like, look, you're a little bit of a fuck up. So let me try and save you as much as I can. Cause he's sober too. And he had been sober at this time. He got sober when I was 15. And 15 is when my drinking really started to take off. But it got worse when I got in the art.
Why do you think it got worse? Just because of the stress of being there and all that?
No, you know what it was? Oh, dude. Oh, the freedom. When you lived at home, you have the constraints of your parents. You have the constraints of family and the expectations of the community that you grew up in and stuff like that. Those are all kind of constraining. When I was fighting against that as a kid, I had a really good friend named David Buchanan. His father was a famous guitar player, named Roy Buchanan. And his father used to play with the Rolling Stones, Clapton. Like he taught Ron Wood, which is one of the guitar players for the Rolling Stones, how to play guitar. He was his guitar teacher. This guy was a big deal. And his son was one of my best friends. And when he would go off on concerts, we would party like fucking crazy at his house. So those were the times when I was just like, oh, I could bust loose. And I started experiencing things. It's a funny joke because I'm from the South, but the first girl I ever made out, her name was Ella Gus. God, I hope she's not listening. Hi, Ella. And it's the first girl I ever made out with, the first boob I ever touched, the first time I touched a girl's butt, everything, right? And then I am hammered drunk off of Mad Dog 2020. So is she. We're making out in the middle of the floor of the house. And I was like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my fucking life.
Yes.
I'm going to get drunk and touch boobies for the rest of my fucking life. Let me get a job that does that, And so that's kind of like where the downfall came with me not being able to get into West Point and having to join the military.
But it's so sad. And I've heard this from so many people that your first consequence from alcohol caused you to not get into West Point.
Yeah.
So sad. I mean, we all have it. Like we've all destroyed things.
And the weird thing with me is I didn't catch the consequences at first. My friends would get caught and I would see their consequences and I would be like, fucks for them. Fuckers never should have got caught.
So when did you get sober?
Like the military was that freedom. Now I had no more constraints of community or family. I could do what I want, how I wanted. And that was really what tipped the scales for me, was being able to call the shots for myself. It's the fucking stupidest thing that could ever fucking happen to me
Yeah.
whatsoever. You
Felt
know,
like that in college as well. I was like, oh, I'm free. Oh, I can do whatever I want. I'm an adult
yeah,
now. Yeah, that led to like the worst decisions
yeah,
ever.
right? Because I don't know about you, but you and I were cut from a similar cloth a little bit because you like your parents are kind of hands off with you.
Mhm.
They guided you, but they weren't like, go here, Pammy, go here. My parents too. They were just kind of like, oh, we see you're fucking up. Well, okay, you'll learn. You'll learn. And I never fucking did. I did not learn. And it took a lot of loss and a lot of pain for me to finally learn. Long story short, what ended up teaching me was I had finally found a girl that I really truly loved. She was the best in every way. She was a pure soul. She was good. She was smart. She was a doctor. She was in med school at the time. And she didn't drink like I drank. So she could kind of put reins on me a little bit. And I would go with that. She'd be like, hey, let's not get too hammered tonight. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And she could put reins on me and I would accept it, which was very difficult. You used to see it when we dated. You would try and get me to do something that I didn't really want to do, how combative I was with you.
Yeah.
And you're a strong woman. You have serious will. You can get a lot of men to do a lot of shit that they might not want to do. And I would fight with you like mentally over it. But with her, I would just, and I don't mean this in any kind of, it's not that you're not a great woman. Uh, but this girl, she could pull my reins and I would do it. And we ended up having a party for her one night. My last night of drinking was October 17th, 1997. We're having a party for her because she had just graduated. She had done something so that she graduated early. So she had finished Marymount Medical School. And so we're having a party, and one of her classmates brought her boyfriend, who was a fucking prick, and he was hammered, and he was a different ethnicity, but he was acting in a way that was like really, he was argumentative with everybody there. And his English wasn't that great because he was Hispanic. And one rule of the house while we were having a party at the house was nobody goes upstairs because that was all the private bedroom. That was the only rule. Go anywhere else in the house, just don't go upstairs. He goes upstairs and I catch him and he goes into the bathroom and I don't get upstairs until he's already in the bathroom and the door is locked. I'm like, dude, you got to come out of there. And he's like, yeah, in a minute. And I'm like, dude, you got to come out of there. So he goes in there and he takes a shit in the bathroom and then wipes his ass with the towels
Oh my God.
and then just throws them on the floor and walks out. Like, fuck you, guys. What are you going to do? And as he walked past me, he starts going down the stairs. I nail him in the back of the head. He falls down the stairs and I jump on him and we end up in this total full on brawl. Glass is breaking, doors are being ripped off. I'm not even exaggerating. Like bricks are flying. He's throwing bricks at me. He's coming at me with a lead pipe.
Oh
We're
my God.
fighting tooth and nail. Someone calls the cops. As the cops are rolling up, he hits me in the head with a lead pipe, knocks me out. He runs off. Cops chase him. Did they see everything? They see him hit me, so they chase him down. He gets assault too. I go to the hospital. But basically, I'll own this. I said some bad words during the fight, called them some names, some derogatory names. My girlfriend is Spanish. She's from Spain. So the derogatory slangs didn't go so well with her. So I'm hammered. I was so fucking drunk. I didn't even realize I got knocked out.
Oh.
I came to and I was still fighting. And when I came to, it was cops. So I ended up fighting the cops. And they were like, dude, chill. Blah, blah, blah. So 4 New York City cops basically beat the shit out of me in the back of the minute. And then they take me to the hospital. Everything goes down. She comes the next day to pick me up from the hospital. She doesn't come and visit me in the hospital. The hospital calls her and says, you got to come and pick him up because he has nobody else to pick him up. Because at that point, my drinking is like the only person I had in the world was her, because that was the only person I could tolerate. So she comes and picks me up. She takes me home. She puts me in bed. She's in medical school, so she's watching me. She's looking at my eyes and checking things. And she's like, don't mistake this for I give a fuck anymore. I can't have you dying in my house. And I was like, whoa, that was harsh. And so she told me something. She said, how did she put it? She's like, I cannot and do not love whatever the fuck it is you have become. I do not love you. I could never love what you are like this. And then she walked out of the room. That was what got me to stop drinking. Because basically at that point, that was the last person left that could tolerate. And the last person said, you're fucking worthless. You're not worth my time. I just don't want you dying in my house so that I have to explain that to my parents. And that was it. And I had gotten to this point of such little value to somebody who I love so much. And I don't know if you've ever, or if anybody listening has ever been on the bad side of that, of loving someone so much that could not give a fuck if you lived or died at that moment, or if you disappeared and they never saw you again. I was right there. And because my stepfather had gotten sober so many years before that, I called him and I said, what do I do? And he's like, you got to go to a meeting, bro. You got to find a sponsor right away. So he called some friends of his who he knew in New York and said, hey, I need you to find a meeting for my son. They did. They found a meeting near my house and I went. I went once a week and thought I was doing something for myself. I went once a week and I was like, I'm such a good boy.
Did you go once a week, sit in the back and not talk to anybody?
Patted myself on the back.
You're doing great.
Great.
I'm glad you're sober. And yeah, that's a terrible story. You know, we don't come in on a winning streak. And
No,
I hate to be cliche, but it takes what it takes. And that saved your life.
it was not shortly after that I became a cop.
Yeah. So what made you want to be a cop?
This is a fucked up story. Are you ready for a fucked up story?
I'm ready.
So that same girlfriend a year before had told me, we had been laying in bed and she was sad about something. And I was like, what are you sad about? What did I do? You know how guys, we always think it's our fucking fault. We did something. She's like, oh, no, it's not you. It was like a year ago tonight, I got beat up and raped on the subway. And I was like, what? You never fucking told me this. We're laying here in bed. And she told me the whole story. And I was just like, yikes, you know? So the next day I went down to the local precinct and I was just like, hey, what do you got to do to be a cop here? Because I was like, how do I fix this? What do I do? Like, let me become part of the solution. Let me become the people that hunt the evil.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I did. And like literally 6 months later, I was in the police academy. We broke up, but she. Oh, but
It all worked out how it's supposed to. I like that. And that's a great story, Mark. So you became a police officer and you served so many different roles throughout your 22 years. And first of all, what did you like most about being a police officer and what did you like the least?
in New York is a very different experience than being a cop anywhere else. And I only know that because after years of being a police officer and then becoming an instructor for Homeland Security, where I taught law enforcement for Homeland Security, and they would send me around the country to teach different police departments certain types of tactics. So I got to see how those police departments are. And there's a tight knit community in most law enforcement jobs, but at the NYPDs, there is just, it is next level how we engage with each other and the camaraderie and the sense of family that we have with each other. It's very easy for you to feel like an outcast if you can't pull yourself into that kind of like those feelings, like that sense of family that they have. It would be very easy for you to feel like an outcast. But that was the thing that I liked the most.
But are you saying that the other police forces aren't like that?
Well, yeah, they can be, but they don't work together. So in the NYPD, everything is very partner oriented. You do everything with your partner. You guys go to the range together. You go to training together. You go to any schools. If I go to a school, my partner goes to the school with me. But a lot of other police departments, you don't work with a partner. You're alone in your car and you have like this 10 square mile area that's all yours to take care of. And the
Right.
next cop is 10 miles away. So they don't develop that camaraderie. Whereas in the NYPD, we see each other. Like I don't usually cover more than 10 square blocks by myself, me and my partner. We have 10 square blocks. That's ours. Right next to us there's another 2 cops with 10 square blocks. I would work the overnight shifts and we might have 10 cops on the whole overnight shift for an area that was like 25 square miles. That's it.
Mm.
And we're handling everything, every call for service, every fight, everything. And I like that. But what I hated was the worst thing about the NYPD is it's a dog and pony show. So there's a lot of times when the higher ups, they don't give a shit what's really happening. They don't really care about the reality. As long as things look pretty and they're good and they're presentable to the public, then everybody's doing their job. Meanwhile, we have police cars that are missing tires and cops are sick and all of this other crap going on, and they don't care. But as long as what the public sees is pretty and nice, what the newspapers report,
Right, right.
we hated that.
Oh, it's such a subculture, a police officer.
Oh, very much.
And it's just like we've talked about how our lives are so different and we were raised differently, but it's really interesting to hear. I find it fascinating to hear any of these stories. And I think a lot of people that don't know what goes on, we just look for you guys to protect us, but nobody really knows what's going on. And
Oh,
it's
everybody
very,
loves the protection, but they don't know what it takes to provide it.
I remember you telling me a story about a pregnant woman coming after your gun when you were trying to break up a fight and you had to you pushed her. And crazy.
I still remember that.
I have a weird question. Did women hit on you when you were on the job a lot, or did you ever arrest someone and she was like coming on to you to try to get out of the arrest or, manipulate?
So I was never really, I didn't really fall for a lot of that stuff.
Well,
Like
I'm not saying you fell. I didn't ask if you fell for it. I said, did it happen?
well, of course, once in a while you'd get the girl that like I know your shirt wasn't that open when I pulled you over, but it's that open now that I got up to the window. Actually, I'll be honest with you. Oh, those were the women. And I was just like, now you're getting the ticket for sure. And now I'm going to see what else is wrong with your fucking car. Like now, because we're allowed to inspect your vehicle for violations within reason, like lights and windshield wipers and stuff like that. If I found like another light out or something like that, I'm going to write you that ticket too. So
Wait,
like,
why? Just because you were pissed
because
off?
okay, so like if you think that men are that simple, that tits covered in gravy is going to do it for me, no, sorry. And like, what if you got a female cop? You know,
That's different.
like
Yeah, but you're out.
no, what are you going to do?
Yeah, you're out. I mean, so many people, myself included, when I was a teenager, crying when I got pulled over for speeding and the whole
Yeah.
drama and all the bullshit. And, I'm pregnant, even though I'm not. I have a stomach ache. I'm going to throw up,
Oh, well, see that I'll tell you right now, that's one of the things that gets cops annoyed is that people will come up with every excuse in the world why they should not get the punishment for what they did,
Yeah.
but they can't tell me why they did what they did. If you don't think you deserve to be punished for it, okay, that's great. And of course not. But then why did you do it?
Right. Oh, yeah. Nobody wants to get caught. So you worked undercover for a while and did you like it? Tell me a little about it.
I actually almost hated going to work every day as an undercover. So I grew my hair long. I had a nose ring and a tongue ring and a lip ring.
Wait, is this a requirement? You have to have piercings to be undercover?
No, but you have to make yourself look like not a cop,
Right.
you know? So I can't go in there looking like this and say, hey, give me two, son. What's up? Let me get some krills, boy. I'm not going to actually pass. So I grew my hair long. Remember when I would dye my hair blonde?
I did not know you that.
No,
No.
I would change my hair color. I would go blonde or green or something like that.
Funny
Just
because
to-
I know a guy in the IDF in Israel, same thing. And he's like, well, I had really long hair. I'm like, this is the criteria for undercover, I guess.
yeah. Well, you want to have something.
You
Want to
want to
not
look so
do
polished.
the normal.
Right.
Yeah. So I would do little stuff like that, but all I was doing was buying crack and heroin. And I'm 6 foot, 200 pounds. I did not look like a crackhead.
Wait, but you said something funny. You were like, I don't even know how to buy drugs because I'm sober.
Yeah. And I never did drugs. I tried weed like maybe 3 or 4 times in my entire life as a teenager.
Tell us a couple of crazy stories.
I remember one, I was just out of the academy, like not even a week. I was working in Midtown North, so in Manhattan, and we get a call for a woman screaming on the 15th floor or something of this apartment building in Midtown Manhattan. That area, it's very nice. It's very bougie. So every place has a doorman and stuff like that. So when you get multiple calls to the same job, it increases the seriousness of it. And when those multiple calls come from different callers, they're all from the same number. You can kind of be like, it's just some fucking Karen wants to get the police there quicker. But if it's multiple calls from different numbers, you're like, okay, this is multiple people experiencing and witnessing the same thing. So we'll kind of speed up our response. And that's what we had. We had the sounds of screaming in an apartment on the 15th floor. And so we get into the elevator, you can hear it in the elevator. And we get in the elevator and we hear woman screaming, but it's not like screaming, help me. It's just like angry screaming. So we get in the elevator, we get up and he pulls the stop on the elevator so the doors don't open right away. And he starts telling me, he's like, all right, you're going to step out first. You're going to look that way down the hallway. Then I'm going to step out and I'm going to look that way down the hallway. And we discuss what our tactics are going to be so that if we encounter something, we're ready to deal with it. We have just a brief little huddle. Like, this is the plan. Okay, boom. And then he hits the thing and the doors open and I step out and running towards me is a naked woman who is covered in like all I can see. It looks like shit to me. Like she's covered head to toe in shit and she's naked, but it's like ketchup, mustard, chocolate sauce. She had basically emptied the contents of every liquid in her refrigerator onto her naked body and was now running around the hallways of her building. And she comes running at me like top speed. Pammy, she was your size, maybe even a little bit smaller. And she just barrels right into me, like tackles me. And I don't even have time to tell him, like, so I get her and I'm trying to hold her and get her into like press so that he can get his handcuffs out. And we're just rolling down on the floor and she's kicking and screaming and she's trying to bite and I'm trying to hold her head away from me. And he's just standing there laughing at me. And I was like, will you fucking help me? And he's like, yeah, kid, you got it. So he grabs her, we get her in the cuffs. I'm covered in all of this stuff, like from head to toe. And this woman actually ends up being somebody who's famous. And I think today I'm still not allowed to say, and I'm not gonna, because she's probably got lawyers. She was a famous person.
Drugs, right?
We
Drugs.
get her to the hospital and the hospital is like, what the fuck? Like, get some clothes on her. Why are you bringing her in here naked? And I'm like, because that's how we found her. What am I supposed to do? Take her shopping before we come to the fucking hospital? Like, she's a size 2. Let's go. Fuck. So they put gowns on her and stuff, and she's in restraints on the gurney and everything. And so during this time, she's what we call an EDP, an emotionally disturbed person. So we're not allowed to leave until the hospital takes custody of her. And they take like 6 hours for the psychiatrist to finally say, yeah, we'll take custody of her. So I have to sit there and she screamed for all 6 hours, almost nonstop.
Oh my God.
That was fucked up. I mean, 9/11 was fucked up too. That's a fucked up story, but that's long. So,
Were you there by 9/11?
yeah. On the day of 9/11, I was actually downtown at court testifying against the cop, actually, who had gotten arrested the previous New Year's Eve for drunk driving. So I'm testifying against him. And all of a sudden, one of the bailiff guys comes running in and says, we've got to evacuate the building. Plane just hit the World Trade Center. We need to evacuate. And I'm in the middle of testimony, so I don't know what to do. So the judge was like, all right, wrap it up. We'll see what happens. We'll come back. You know, if everything gets cleared, like nobody leave. And I'm like, okay. So I go out, I hang out, and I see the building, and I'm like, oh yeah, a plane hit it. And at that time, almost everybody in that area thought it was a small plane. They didn't know it was an airliner per se. Like, the fire department knew because a lot of them saw it And then everybody's seen the videos where the fire department was lifting up a manhole cover and they looked up and saw it. That video came out like a year after it happened. Because if you remember, they used to have the private planes that would fly around Manhattan all the time and
I don't
helicopters and all that shit. You don't remember. That's awesome. Thank you for backing me up, Pammy. Uh,
totally remember those.
so I'm like, all right, whatever. So I call my boss, my lieutenant, and I was like, hey, I'm at court. This just happened. They're telling us to stand by. He's like, all right, stand by. Cool. Check him in. And then I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna hang out. So I think I was outside at that time. And then then the second plane hits. And I'm like, okay, that is not an accident. This is not an accident. This is on purpose. So I call my lieutenant and I can't get through for a while. Because you know that one of the main cell phone towers was on top of the World Trade Center.
Okay, yeah.
So basically, I guess when the second plane hit, that's when it took out that repeater or that tower. So I couldn't get through to anybody for a little while. So I'm like, all right, fuck it. I'm heading over there to start helping. So I'm making my way from the courthouse in Brooklyn to the Brooklyn Bridge. And then my phone goes off and it's my lieutenant. And he's like, where are you? And I'm like, I'm at court, but I'm on the Brooklyn Bridge right now. You know what happened? And he's like, we know, and you need to come back. And I'm like, no, I'm heading over there right now to help. And he's like, no, head back to the precinct now. And I was like, Lieutenant, I'm here. I'm literally here. I'm a couple 100 yards away. Let me go help. And he was like, you can go help. You'll be suspended. You'll be suspended without pay. Or you can get back here. Choice is yours. You're a grown man. Do what you got to do. I don't remember this lieutenant's name. He wasn't really one of our lieutenants. I didn't work with him very often because he was on a different shift from me. And I think he was only temporarily assigned there. But basically, I'm only alive because that man threatened to suspend me because I would have been in the buildings when they came down.
Wow.
So I head back there. And while I'm heading back, the buildings collapse, you
Oh
know,
my God.
and I get back and I'm like, what happened? What happened? And they're like, both of the buildings just collapsed.
How
And,
did you feel at that
and,
moment?
and I looked at that lieutenant and he looked at me and he goes, we're at war. And I was just like, what do you want me to do? And he's like, get ready for battle. Like, you'll get all your gear on, get your helmet, get all of the riot gear, get anything that you need to deal with whatever's coming, because there might be more. Because basically at that point now, we're being told more is coming. Because then we had just learned about the Pentagon and the one out in Pennsylvania. So we were like, if there's 4, there's 10. So we didn't know what to do.
So what was your assignment right after that? Did you go down to ground zero or where were you?
Yeah, at about 6 o'clock that night, we had formed up and they were like, all right, everybody heads down. We had to leave people at the precinct. When I tell you, I don't want to offend anybody, but I worked in the fucking ghetto. I worked in one of the worst ghettos in New York City. And you leave that fucking ghetto unattended, even in the middle of that old 9/11, it's going to burn. It's going to fucking burn. So we lived 10 cops. That was it. 10 cops, 1 sergeant, and 1 lieutenant stayed behind to handle the precinct. And the rest of us went down to ground zero. And when we got there, it was the most insane. Like, having been in combat, I had seen death. I had seen destruction. I'd been near explosions. I'd been shot down in helicopters. I'd been in crashes and all this other stuff. I had seen the aftermath of war. And we went to this one spot near the Brooklyn Bridge. And then we all mustered up to get our assignments of where you're going to go and where you're going to dig. Because we were digging. We were looking for people at this point because they were still pulling people out of the rubble. And they were like, all right, this team, you guys go grab those buckets. And they gave us those big 5-gallon buckets. Remember the bucket brigades? You would see them on TV. We were just passing buckets.
Buckets of debris? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They gave us hard hats. And we started marching down Maiden Lane.
I used to work on Maiden Lane. My dad's office was on Maiden Lane. They were there when it happened. Yeah.
We walked down Maiden Lane, and at the end of Maiden Lane was what was left of the World Trade Center. And it was a pile about 35, 40 feet high, maybe higher, maybe 50 feet high. Smoke was coming off of it. There was still fire in some places. And I don't know if you've ever smelled like burning plastic and asbestos and hair. That was the only smell.
Uh,
Everything was super quiet. The only noise you heard was the sound of the buckets being handed from one person to another for like 10 or 15 minutes. Like that was the only sound I heard. And I didn't know that was what that sound was until we got up there and I saw them handing the buckets. I was like, what is that noise? But it was the only thing you could hear. And it was just weird. It was like
oh,
different
wow.
world.
That is so intense. How long were you down there for doing this?
Oh, I spent the first 9 months. I was down there 6 days a week, 12-hour days. So
Wow.
12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And then we had one day off.
And how does this affect you? I know you're trained to deal with this. Like you said, you've been in wars, you've seen people killed in combat. How does this affect you mentally as well as physically?
I mean, we'd find bodies all the time. There was a daycare in one of the World Trade Center buildings, not the towers, but one of the other buildings. There were
Mhm.
people who worked in the World Trade Center could bring their kids there and they would get babysat all day. And there was a woman who had run back in to make sure that the daycare was empty. And I didn't find any of this out until after the fact. She had run back in to make sure that it had been evacuated. And then when she came out, she got creamed by the building. And we found her. And the only reason we knew that she had been in that building is she was running so fast. One of her high heels came off, and one was inside the building, and the other one was still on her foot when we found her.
Uh,
And I remember she had red hair because the first thing we found of her was her hair sticking up through the debris. And then somebody said, that's hair. Because at first you're like, what is that? Wires? Is that insulation? What is that? And then you start seeing and you're like, that's human hair. And as soon as you would see something like that, you would yell, I got a body, I got a person, or like over here, you would just do something and everybody would stop and we'd come running over and we'd have a body bag. And then instead of using the shovels and the 5-gallon buckets, we just stick our hands in there and we're just doing it by hand. And we uncovered her body by hand. And then I don't know if you've ever smelled a dead body,
I
but
haven't.
by the time we got to her, she had been there for 5 or 6 days.
Did they find any? I don't remember. Did they find anybody alive?
In
Oh,
the first 2 or 3 days, there were a couple of people found alive,
yeah.
actually. I think 2 of them were cops. I don't know if that's a story. It's just something that I heard that maybe 2 Port Authority cops had been found alive. Um,
No.
I don't think a single firefighter was found alive. I don't know.
This
But
is just
by
so
about 4 or 5
unimaginable.
days, there's really very little chance that you're going to find anybody alive underneath all of that stuff.
Yeah. And is this something, because you worked in counterterrorism and this is something you were trained for, is this considered counterterrorism or is this just terrorism?
To be honest, this is just rescue and recovery.
Okay.
I mean, it's stuff that we train for, doing recoveries and rescues and stuff like that. We train for it, but you can't train for real. We train with mannequins and dummies. Every once in a while, we'll take a real person and we'll use makeup to make it look like they're really fucked up, you
Right.
know? But when we do the training, they have a thing around their neck that says what their injuries are, like broken leg, broken jaw, stuff like that, you
Mm,
know, like not alive, but barely. So it's
right.
like, you can't really train for that kind of stuff. I mean, yes, you can. Yes, you, because every firefighter listening right now is like, I could fucking train for that. And
Yeah.
they do. Firefighters are the best at it in the world.
Oh my God. It wasn't even a topic I was going to talk about with you. I didn't even think about it, but I'm
Yeah.
glad we talked about it because so many people, it was our lives back then. I mean, it didn't affect me personally, but thank God it was just probably the worst terror attack on US soil, right? Yeah.
I think the first 4 or 5 weeks, we didn't have days off really, because you would go down on your day off and say, I'll work. And
This is so crazy. I interviewed an IDF soldier who it's like such a similar vibe to what happened on October 7th. He's like, oh, we just went down there. We didn't come back for 2 months and we're fighting. I mean, you weren't fighting against people, but it's just the enormity of these tragedies. It's a very similar feeling listening to you talk about it.
I love the Israelis. I love them so much
I love
because
them.
the dedication to their country, to their way of life to their fellow Israeli, to their fellow Jew, but even to their enemy. I would never see such a wholesale dedication to saving life as the IDF. I love them so much.
Oh, wait. And this is one of my favorite parts of your resume, which I didn't know until recently. You were an explosive engineer.
Okay.
So that means you built bombs.
Yeah.
And obviously, then you take them apart as well. You know how to do that.
They sound like they're similar, but it's similar just like how a car and a semi truck are motor vehicles, but they're completely fucking different things.
I never knew someone who built a bomb. And I knew you and didn't even know you built a bomb. And now I know.
Yeah, well, explosive engineering is actually something that's used in mining operations or landscaping sometimes, or say they want to build a new traffic tunnel and it's got to go through a mountain. So they'll call in explosive engineers, which are their street name is blasters. So I went to blaster school. The NYPD sent me to blaster school to learn as much as I could about explosives, how they work, how they're applied professionally, so that we could try and learn, like, how would a bad guy do these things? I'll even show you some of the props. Like this is C4. You can see right there, it says charge demolition.
So
This is
cool.
military C4.
Yeah.
It's fake. It's fake. It's used for training and then
Okay.
have dynamite.
Oh, I
So
love that's not
these are
obviously
used
that's
for
great
training.
too.
So I went to school to learn all about those things so that I could teach police officers how to recognize the parents of a bomb. Because 99% of the time, a bomber, someone who's going to commit a crime using explosives, they're not going to put it together at their house and then drive it to the place, because
Right.
the likelihood of it going off en route is like very, very high. You know, they're going to wait till they get there and then they're going to put it together in the place where they're. So when you, as the police officer, when you stop them, you might not see this. You'll only see this.
Loves. Got
And
it.
if you can
Love.
recognize this, now you have what we call reasonable suspicion or reasonable cause to believe that something else that goes to this might be present. And you can, in most places, you can do what's called a Terry stop, which is Terry v. Ohio, based on Terry v. Ohio, which is a Supreme Court case from the 1970s, which allows us as police officers to search people for things when we believe that a crime is about to be committed, was just committed, or is in the process of being committed at that time.
So cool. You have so much knowledge in your head and it's so
Every cop
interesting.
knows this, though.
Okay. Well, I'm not a
This is all
cop,
Police
so
Academy 101.
I love it. What's the biggest misconception about cops you wish people understood?
Man, there's so many of them. 99% of cops, we don't want to deal with you. We have to. You've done something in front of us. So we have to, it's our duty. It is what we're paid to do. And if I hear one more time, I'm a taxpayer, I pay your salary. Like we don't fucking pay taxes, you know?
Right.
And as a matter of fact, cops pay higher taxes than the average person in the public because we can't hide things because our paychecks come from the government, you know? So
Interesting.
we
Never
have no
thought about
places
that.
to hide. We don't have little uh, accounts that we can put stuff in. Like our money is traceable. So we're paying all of the taxes.
Right.
Rant over.
You ever watch Cops?
I have a hard time watching Cop.
You want to scream at the screen or you're just like laughing?
Oh, I do. You know
Yeah.
I do, man.
Yeah.
Okay, the worst for me is not actually cops because those are real cops following real police
It's the
procedures.
people, it's civilian.
I'll get mad if they like don't put handcuffs on somebody quick enough, you know, because like in the NYPD, we're taught as soon as you're at reasonable suspicion, you put the person in handcuffs and you conduct your investigation because there's nothing illegal about putting somebody in handcuffs as long as you can articulate that it's for a reasonable period of time. You can't put them in handcuffs for 6 hours. It has to be for a reasonable amount of time, and it has to be for investigative purposes and for officer and safety of themselves, the officer, and the public at large. So as long as you can articulate those things, and by articulate, I don't mean say, but show that those things. But I'm a fan of putting the cuffs on quick. I'm not going to talk to somebody who I think has a knife in their pocket for 10 fucking minutes. I'm going to put them in handcuffs. I'm going to toss them. I'm going to find the knife, and then I'm going to have the discussion. Um,
That's hot. Do you miss anything about being on the job? Free parking? Did you miss anything or you're just happy to be done?
uh,
Did you get free parking?
Everybody thinks we do because they see that little thing that we would put in our window. That's
Yeah.
this car belongs to a police officer, but that doesn't work anywhere except in front of the precinct that that officer works at. The only place that we can park for free is in front of our precinct.
Right.
Everywhere else we have to pay. I had my car towed so many times with my thing in the window, and they love to tow a police officer's car because you know what? They're going to get the money. They're either going to
Right.
get it out of my pocket or out of my paycheck.
Right.
They're always going to get it. So I definitely don't
Um,
miss that, but I do miss, there were some good times. There were some really good times. And you said it before, you mentioned that we're a lifestyle, like
right.
being
It's, I said it's a subculture that unless
a
you're
subculture. There you
in
go.
your world, you're not familiar with
That,
most of it.
that culture is, so when I was in the hospital, after I got this, they took me straight to the hospital. They took my partner to the hospital because she had a concussion. Like 65 fucking cops who I've never met before showed up at the hospital because they didn't know what was going on with us. All they knew is that somebody had called what we call a 1085, and then it had turned into a 1013, which means officer down. 1085 means I need assistance. 13 means I might die if you don't get here now. I didn't call the 13, somebody else did. I called for an 85. In my entire career, I never called for a 13, never. But I called for 85s a lot. Like 6 different precincts heard that. And 6 different precincts showed up at the hospital to make sure I was okay. They had no idea who I was. All I was a voice on the radio that said,
Right.
I have 1085 right now. I need help.
I love that. That's incredible.
And
And
like
that
60
it
cops.
should be like that. Yeah, that's like your extended
That's what
family.
usually-
We ever shot?
I've been in 3 shootouts on the job. So I was never shot as a police officer. I was never,
Right.
but I've 1 shootout off duty and 2 on duty.
Crazy shit, Mark. Crazy.
Yeah,
Well, thank
it
you
was
so
the
much for
job
being
at the
here.
time.
I
You know,
know.
that's what it
Thank you.
was.
Thank you for not arresting me, suing me, or bringing back up to this recording.
Why would I arrest you, Pammy?
I don't know. I'm just kidding. But this was awesome. And I want to say for me and everybody else, thank you so much for all your service, everything you've done. And you are awesome. Thank you so much.